We clear? I guess we're clear. All right. Hey, Chronic, how's it going, brother?
It's going, man. I am so sorry it's been such a shit show here the last 2 days, but happy to be back.
Brother, who are you telling? It has been a shit show for 10 days.
Hey, I'll tell you what, I'm just glad to learn. In fact, IU was very much talking to Thad Matta. Who'd have thunk it?
Imagine that. Yep, and he didn't get the job because of his health problems. Imagine that. But he's going to be a part of it. It's funny. Somebody asked earlier if I got any apologies for that. I'm like, yeah, right. It doesn't work that way. But we've been talking about that a lot. The integration, Chronic, of a Thad Matta, someone who is not only is he Big Ten entrenched, great college coach, but the state of Indiana. He lives in Indianapolis right now. So he was already here. He coached at Butler. His wife is from Seymour. I found out yesterday from John Laskowski. He wanted the Indiana job before. They should have hired him a long time ago. We'd probably just now be going through another coaching search, or maybe 3 years ago. Would have been a great Thad Matta run probably. But here we are, and Mike Woodson's your new coach. And now Kenya Hunter's being retained, but that just came out. Looking forward to seeing who these next two assistants are going to be, Chronic. I'd sure like to see Mike Lewis or Calbert Cheney.
Yeah, this is Indiana's kind of been star-crossed for some time now. Brad Stevens is clearly has been the golden boy for some time in Indiana circles, and deservedly so. But people forget, it was very, very much commonplace to bemoan IU losing out on Thad Matta when they transitioned away from Mike Davis and ended up bringing in Kelvin Sampson. We just never quite had the timing right, and it was just salt in the wounds watching Thad make his career progression, ultimately end up at Ohio State and just go on an absolute tear over there.
Much like Chris Holtman.
Yeah, for over a decade. I mean, that's the tried and true path, and it's been worn pretty well over the years. But it's just been a very, very contentious issue for Indiana to see this talent that's been maturating in our backyards, only to lose them because we couldn't get our stuff together at the right time in order to capitalize on it. So to this day, it still blows my mind that Thad Matta is currently a Hoosier. His sister-in-law played basketball with Terry Moore, and I grew up in that gym watching her take that team to a Final Four in the state championship. And it's the world's second largest high school gym, first, depending on what the count is, and you got to realize, man, in the 80s to watch girls fill the gym up, it was just something I've never seen in my life. Not like that. So his roots go really, really deep in here, just all over the Midwest for that matter. One of the most respected minds in the game in the last quarter century. And then, you throw in the news, Woj drops the bomb that we're talking to Larry Brown. And it just, again, I can't wrap my mind around it because it's just incomprehensible that, Indiana comes out of a coaching search that results in a lot of raised eyebrows, a lot of questions. It certainly wasn't the splashiest of hire that I think a lot of folks were expecting. And before you can even fully process it, now all of a sudden we're just going around gobbling up the greatest minds in college basketball right now. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention, Larry Brown's a guy that's lost pretty much all his college jobs for recruiting violations. But, Woj says it's going to be in a non-recruiting role, just in an advisory position. But nevertheless, it has been an absolute whirlwind here. The last 4 days, effectively, as Indiana has put Woody in place, and as he's starting to assemble a staff now.
Yeah, the one thing that comes to mind is just do it differently. That was the recipe for IU football. Well, I don't think it was intentional, but it was an unintentional do it differently because the traditional guys could not turn Indiana football around. It didn't matter if it was Sam White. It didn't matter who DiNardo. It didn't matter who it was. They just couldn't do it. It was not possible. So you bring in a guy who just never been a head coach, who doesn't know anything about being a head coach in college, and you pay him the 63rd worst salary in coaching, and he turns the damn program around like it's never been done before ever. You do it differently. And I think that that's kind of what this is done. It's different. It's a different means of doing something. And you know what? The traditional means has not worked for Indiana. They never, like you said, a lot of it's been timing and bad decisions, those two things. But they're doing it a little bit differently, and I think it will end up working out and getting back to where they need to be.
You know, Indiana spent the last 2+ decades running away from the ghost of Bob Knight. And every time we found ourselves in a coaching search, there's always been this division among the fans, among the alumni, about whether or not we need to bring a Knight guy in. And, you know, for the better part of that period, it was always Steve Alford's name. You know, Steve was the one who should have had the job. Steve was the guy who should have gotten an interview. IU messed up because they didn't talk to Steve. And they fought that. They resisted that. You know, they would try to piecemeal it. You know, you had Calvert on staff briefly. They brought Mike Woodson back. I'm not Mike Woodson. I'm sorry. They brought Mike Roberts back. Excuse me. But it still never really satisfied that end of the fan base, of the family. And, you know, they fully embrace that with this hire. You know, you hear Woody talking about bringing all the old guys back, you know, talking to Dockich on his show earlier this week, reaching out to all the former players and just letting them know, you know, this is going to be a family again. And he is fully intent on bringing all the family back together, which, you know, at this point, you talk about things we haven't done. It's been a long time since you've seen the entire IU basketball family feel fully welcomed back in the gym. And I know every coach has made an effort to try to do it, but probably because of the way in which we got to those points, the family never felt fully welcome back. And, you know, you saw just the outpouring of emotion when they brought Bob Knight back into Assembly Hall. You know, not coincidentally, when you look at that very moment, standing at center court, you had Quinn Buckner on Knight's right arm, and you had Woodson on his left. Family's back, man, and I'm excited to see a lot of those familiar faces that have been, you know, kind of absent from the hall for far too long. You know, Woody is good friends with Quinn. He's good friends with Scott May. You know, Scott lives just 3-4 blocks away from my house, yet you almost never see him at Assembly Hall. And part of that's just he's a low-key kind of guy. Part of it is that, you know, he's loyal to his coach. And a lot of those guys felt disenfranchised for a long time. So bringing that back can never hurt. Now, at the end of the day, you know, bringing the conversation full circle, you talk about the unlikely path they took with Tom Allen. Ultimately, Tom Allen's success at Indiana has been almost entirely the result of his ability to attract, to motivate, and connect with young kids. And ultimately, you know, I don't care what the job is, making connections, nurturing connections, developing those connections are everything in every facet of the professional life. So ultimately, you know, when it comes down to whether or not Woody's going to work here, you know, there's no doubt the guy can coach. I mean, he spent, again, almost a quarter century in the NBA as a coach, another decade plus as a player. He knows basketball. You know, there's only so many humans on earth that can say they coach in the NBA. Even fewer still can say they've coached in the NBA playoffs. Even far fewer still that can say they did it with multiple teams, not to mention the Atlanta Hawks and the New York Knicks. No doubt the guy can coach. I mean, absolutely a basketball mind. Ultimately, though, it's going to come down to can he make connection with teenagers and young 20-something-year-old men.
Yeah, and bringing Larry Brown along, if that happens, I know that some people, Forrest said that he personally wouldn't want him anywhere around the program, and I get that. He's not going to be in a recruiting role, so and he's 80. He's probably just going to be sitting in a wheelchair, giving some of that great basketball mind and knowledge that he can to Mike Woodson, because, man, they're like I talked about earlier, there are just three brains that just jump out. His, Patino's, and Knight's. Those are three of the greatest minds in the game. So yeah, you draw any of that you can get. I know he's probably spent some time with Coach Knight since he's been back. But it's Indiana is different than, say, you know, you look at Kentucky. Kentucky doesn't have coaches that it's not their tradition, but they're not a team that's built on Kentucky players, or it's not a, they're not a, what I would call, Indiana's built from the inside out, always has been. The foundation of Indiana has been Indiana. And so it's different in that regard. And that's why it matters. That's why I think that bringing the family back together will ultimately make this program back to what it used to be. And it has to have that foundation. I think this program needs that foundation to survive and be successful. They have not had it for 2 decades, and that's why the success has not been there.
Yeah, there's been a lot of things that just haven't quite clicked with the program for some time. We've had brief periods where it felt right and it felt good again, but they were too short-lived and they weren't sustainable. They weren't durable. Talking about what went wrong with Archie, looking back at what has failed, what's worked over the past, it's going to be imperative that he establish a foundation early on that he can build upon. We've seen in prior moves where you get the right pieces in and then they're gone and it creates a vacuum that never quite gets filled. And, obviously right now the emphasis is on the Trace Jackson Davis, on Armand Franklin, getting the guys that he wants, the guys that want to be back at Indiana to come back to Indiana. You've got to have something. I'm looking at Race Thompson in that same conversation as well. You've got to have players that can pass on these lessons, that give you more coaches on the floor when you bring new guys into the system, just to help emphasize the message and communicate to them what we're trying to do here and just get them up to speed faster. But ultimately you're going to have to find the right fits. You're going to have to find the right players. You're going to have to get guys that fit in your culture, that fit in your system, that share the vision of what you're trying to build at Indiana. And, I think the fascinating thing about Woodson is obviously with his pro chops, that's going to be his message to these guys is I'm going to be able to develop you, get you the skill set that you need to make the leap to the next level to go play professional basketball, and just an absolute boatload of credibility when it comes to that particular message. But as we're all aware in the college game, it takes far, far more than just one guy doing that. So compiling the staff early on, getting that core group together is just going to amplify the effectiveness of that messaging and that outreach. And I suspect that's something that they're very active in right now. As you mentioned before I jumped on, with the transfer portal being what it is, we're fast approaching a quarter of all Division I basketball players now in the transfer portal. So it's a great opportunity to build a team, to onboard a bunch of new bodies, and hopefully have some remaining pieces that you can move forward with.
Yep, and looking forward to it. We got the high school finals this weekend, man. A lot of excitement there. You've got CJ Gunn, an IU recruit that is playing in the 4A state championship game against Todd Leary's son, Will Leary, in Carmel. So we got some connections there. And speaking of connections, a minute ago when you mentioned the Seymour connection with Terry Moore and his wife was there, and John Leskowski's wife is from there. But the connections, that's what I was talking about. The fabric of Indiana, of the Indiana basketball program had just been severed. I shouldn't say severed, but it had been torn pretty badly and was hanging by threads. And it's got to be repaired. And it's not just the Bob Knight guys. It's the Crean guys. It's the Sampson guys. And now the Archie guys, I guess. And that's the thing. Through all of those, Bob Knight, all of those teams passed down to the freshmen. Everybody learned. I don't think there's been a lot of learning about Indiana basketball or being a college athlete or whatever it takes over the last couple of years for these guys. Unfortunately, I don't think that they've gotten the education that they should have gotten while being at Indiana. And I don't mean academic education.
No, that's certainly been a huge component that's missing, and that's certainly one of Indiana's greatest assets, one of its strongest attributes that's just never been fully realized. Because when the family's fractured like it has been, it was a pretty deep division among the alumni, among the former basketball players after Coach Knight was let go, and that never really fully healed. They made a lot, like I said, they made a lot of attempts, and it's not to say that guys weren't receptive to it. It just was never fully publicly embraced, as far and few between. that they would come together publicly. They had their golf outings annually. They had a lot of things behind the scenes, but there was just as many things happening up in Indianapolis, where the night guys would meet in private. We'd occasionally get a glimpse. They'd show a picture from a diner, or in somebody's living room where they were getting together. Bringing that back out in the open, bringing that back into the gym, into Cook Hall, and letting those guys know what it means, that even though they're separated by, considerable distance, or at least time, as far as the different generations that are all a part of that, they've all gone through the same thing. And I think Mike did a really good job articulating that in his press conferences and his interviews since, what it means to be a kid from Indianapolis, to have an opportunity to put that jersey on, what it means to have that brotherhood with those guys that go along that journey with you, and how that really shapes you for life. Because that was one element that's really been lost from Indiana. Once you graduated from that program, you were a made man. I mean, you were made. You were going to go get a pharmaceutical job if you didn't end up playing professionally. You were going to get taken care of. You were going to have connections for life. And as you listen to Woodson name check people that are certain names that I think a lot of folks that aren't intimately familiar with Indiana weren't familiar with, there were a lot of folks up there that he attributed to the success he was able to have in life. And a lot of those names had nothing to do with basketball per se, but were very much a part of the Indiana basketball experience, and setting him up to be the man that he was, and opening up the doors and the opportunities that he enjoyed along his way to get to this point. Bringing that back, I think, matters just as much as having those faces in the gym and in Cook Hall, because quite honestly, that was part of the Indiana basketball experience. It wasn't just a 4-year thing, it was a lifetime thing. And the more voices you can have that come and reiterate that message and share their stories, the more you can make those connections for the younger guys and help them fully appreciate just what it means to play basketball at Indiana, and how that can impact your life far beyond your years here on campus.
Now we have to wait to see who's coming back. Tony says he thinks Hunter was a big reason Parker Stewart came to IU. Yeah, I think that the relationship there after his father passed, so that could be important to that. You've got Trace Jackson Davis. Many people have said that Brunk and Woodson meeting went well. I don't know. If Joey Brunk's going to play college basketball, he's going to play here. He's not going anywhere else. I don't see him leaving to go anywhere personally. Let's see. Trace Jackson Davis, look at development. Yeah, that's the one thing I think. And Mike Woodson said this. He wants Trace Jackson Davis, of course, to stay for obvious reasons. But he talked about the development that he needs. And it's true. He doesn't have a shot. He doesn't. And he can't go offhanded. And the fact that wasn't worked on in those 2 years is two things. It's a slap. It shows Archie's lack of development. But it shows that I think he needs to do that. But hey, he's got to make his decisions on what's best for him. And I get that, because we all know that you get better training at the level above. So it's going to be interesting to see what Trace Jackson Davis does, because if he leaves, they're going to have to hit the transfer portal themselves, I think.
No, absolutely. There's no doubt. Absolutely. And I wouldn't be surprised if they don't bring in some more length. Even if Trace does choose to stay, I mean, they need depth at that position. They need depth at the 4 spot. They honestly need to build depth all across the floor, quite frankly. There is just a litany of needs for this team going forward. There's a lot of pieces that are currently on campus right now that would certainly go a long way in getting them that depth, obviously, and keeping that together. But I think if you're Mike Woodson, the message you have for Trace, there's no guarantee as a late second rounder, if that's what your prospects are looking like. There's certainly going to be a whole lot less exposure if that in fact is your fate and you end up in the G League, or even overseas for that matter. So he's a guy that has the experience, that has the firsthand knowledge what it takes to make that jump. And he can communicate to him as well how his system's going to do that, not just from an individual standpoint, but how his system is going to make him better suited for that next level. Because quite frankly, the system that he was coming out of in the last 2 years wasn't necessarily it. That's not the type of basketball that he can expect to be playing going forward. And I don't know that it necessarily showcased his talents in the best light. So you want to talk about starting to space the floor, playing inside out a little bit more. That only has to be music to his ears, as well as Anthony Leals and some of the other guys in the roster for that matter.
Absolutely. Anything coming up with Chronic? I know that you guys, you and Zach, do the Banner podcast. I know it's been hit and miss with that because of the timing.
Yeah, we were able to get together and do an emergency pod, kind of an instant reaction thing on Sunday as this was breaking. And, it's wild too. I was able to get some early wind on that, and before it was released, and it was fascinating that throughout this entire process, with the exception of the information you had, with the exception of Jake Query, I assume he probably heard directly from Calvert. That he had interviewed for it. There was very, very little coming out about the process. And as luck had it, one of Woody's family members um, is family members with a friend of mine. And before he before he publicly accepted the job, he had reached out and let some of his family know he was coming back to Indiana. He was going to take the Indiana job, and he was absolutely ecstatic and elated to come home because people forget this is Mike's home. These are his people. His family's still here. His roots are still here, and he had kept his circle tight throughout this. But he just reached out to let them know, and through those family circles, it was made known to me Sunday morning that we're gonna have a new coach that day, and it kind of caught everybody by surprise. And within a couple of hours, it was being confirmed at the national level. So that one was kind of hastily put together. Zach's still covering the tournament right now for the Indy Star up in Indianapolis, so he's been absolutely scrambling. But I suspect we're going to get together here in the coming days, and now that we've had some time to digest and process all the information, it's been like drinking from a fire hose here recently, and I suspect it's going to stay that way for some time with all the decisions that are probably going to be made public here real soon. And then, as we've talked about with the transfer portal, the hits are going to keep coming. It's a two-way street. I wouldn't be surprised if we lose some for good. But I think Indiana fans need to take a deep breath, take it all with some salt. Let's see what the roster looks like, as we head into the summer session. And then, for a lot of people that are kind of hesitant with the hire, with the moves, like I've been telling everybody, we've seen a lot of guys that came in and won the press conference, said all the right things. We all bought the T-shirts and we got on board, and then we were left a little hurt when it was all said and done. So I'm really excited to watch the journey here. I'm really excited for the ride, and I'm really excited to revisit these very conversations we're having right now. Probably this time next March. Probably in March subsequent to that, because ultimately that's going to be what determines success or failure with this move. And it's a big move, it's a risky move, but it's got a huge upside if Mike can get the sauce just right. And with any luck, it could be the move that changes Indiana Stars, hopefully for good, after 2 years kind of lost in the woods trying to figure out their way.
Yeah, I reached out to a former Indiana coach, Mike Davis, and he had nothing but great things to say. He said it's a great hire, that Mike will have Indiana back in the Final Four, which I thought was a great quote coming from him. I'm like that because of all the crap he takes. At the end of the day, man, he just got put into a situation, Mike Davis, and he's a super great guy. But I love that comment that he'll have him back to the Final Four because he's the last guy to get him there. But I do believe that. I do believe that this is the beginning of a lot of things for Indiana, most of them good. I think this is the way back. Whether this is the guy that's going to get them to a national championship, I don't know that, but I think that this is the path back to relevance, path back to being competitive year in, year out in the Big Ten, because in the state of Indiana, that should never not be the case. There's too much talent here every year. There's too much coaching talent here every year. And you look at all these teams like Loyola, Porter Moser, and all these names you had popping up. If those guys are so popular, well, guys like Mike Woodson has got twice the coaching experience as they do, so I'm fine with it. But yeah, I'm just looking forward to it. I think it's going to be a good thing all the way around.
Yeah, and I'm more than anything too. I'm obviously I am who I am. I'm pulling for this team. I'm pulling for this program. This is my alma mater. This is my home as well. I would love nothing more than for the national writers to have to eat some crow when this is all said and done as well, because Lord knows Indiana's taken its lumps here throughout the process up until that point. The one thing that that highlights, though, there's never a sure thing. You know, Archie was supposed to be a home run, grand slam, higher generational coach. It is what it is, and it just didn't work out. You know, a lot of folks had similar comments at each step along the way, whether it was Kelvin, whether it was Crean. Um, you know, time will tell. But at the end of the day, Indiana's tried everything else, so perhaps it's time they take the bold move and try something they've never done. And let's see if that doesn't hopefully result in a different outcome for Indiana.
Absolutely, man. Anything you have coming up folks need to know about?
Well, you know, I got a dog back at the vet for the entire day. I got a boy in a boot. We're going to go see a foot specialist today. Got a vacation on the calendar here in just a couple of weeks. So, of course, my son has to find his way into a cast for the third consecutive vacation in a row.
What's a vacation? What is this vacation you speak of?
You know, man, I'm going to go get as far away from people as possible. I'm going to go sit on a beach, put a cold drink in my hand. This is actually, we're looking forward to this one. This is going to be the first time since my brother's marriages where we've all got our families together. And, you know, at each one of those points, my brothers hadn't had a family yet. So I got nieces and nephews, my brothers and their wives. We're all going to go get we got a beach house down in Cape San Blas, Florida, the Forgotten Coast, which is a perfect pandemic vacation spot because there ain't nobody down there. So we're just going to go veg out, go spend some quality family time, going to gorge on some seafood and, you know, kind of put the chaos of pandemic life behind us here for a little bit. Best yet, too, everybody in that crew is going to be vaccinated, save for the kids. So, you know, finally get a chance where we can go venture out. You know, along those lines, too, man, I get to go to my childhood home for the first time since Christmas 2019 here this weekend. Everybody's heading back to the farm to go celebrate Easter. Going to be the first time we've been indoors at my mom and dad's house and my childhood house since this whole thing started. So I'm just over the moon that, you know, it seems like forever ago that this all started, but, you know, in less than 13 months, I get to go home again, man. So I'm pretty excited about that.
Sounds like a Hoosier holiday, man.
I'm looking forward to it.
Man, I'm looking forward to having you on each week, brother. Appreciate it. Couldn't thank you enough. Can't thank you enough.
Thanks for having me back, man. Again, sorry it took so long to get back on here, but appreciate you making it work. Have a great day.
Appreciate you, brother. Chronic Hoosier joining us here on this Wednesday. That's going to pretty much wrap it up. Hey, appreciate you guys. Share out the YouTube. Sign up. We just need trying to get to 1,000 subscribers for that. So we're trying to get that locked down so we can keep moving forward to that. But thank you guys so much for everything you do, man. We appreciate y'all. Without you all, there is no show. Trying to think what today's Wednesday, so I don't think there's anything going on today. Tomorrow we got some more press conferences with football. It's just nonstop. There's soccer going on. You got baseball going on. Hopefully we can get back to some of that coverage. The women are just getting back from their Elite Eight run. You've got the NCAA tournament Final Four set. We've got the IHSA state championship this weekend set. It's nuts. But it's fun. Whoo, boys and girls, I need a vacation, man. And I'm going to hopefully take one next month or something. But I can't thank you guys enough. Y'all make it so much fun. Appreciate all the comments, especially all those on YouTube. Go to Indiana Sports Beat Radio on YouTube and sign up and share it out. Like I said, somebody come up with a way. I just ordered or in the process of ordering a bunch of new visors. These were extraordinarily popular. Adidas, black and gray, and then the black ball caps. I'm going to get a bunch of those in and figure out how to give those out with some contests. So somebody think of a great idea, but we need to get to 1,000 subscribers on YouTube. So a contest for that would be great. But man, that's going to wrap it up. Let me know anything you guys need, want to hear, any guests that you'd like to get on. That we haven't had on for a while. Send that in or whatever. Always pay attention to everything. But thanks you guys and have a great day. Go out, do something nice for somebody. Wear your mask. And until tomorrow, I'm Jim Coyle. I will see you on the radio.